And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Module 6 of the semester. We've talked a lot about sales foundations. We've talked about the purpose of sales, the reason for sales, why you should not be intimidated by sales. But this morning, we're actually going to talk about how you open the sales conversation. We're going to focus on the business to consumer relationship, not to be confused with a business to business relationship or a consumer to consumer relationship. When it comes to sales, we're going to talk about both of those moving forward in the semester. But this morning, we're going to talk just about opening the business to consumer relationship. And it's really important to remember that the opening of a sales conversation cannot necessarily win you a sale, but it can certainly lose you a sale. So it's really important to pay attention through this and to understand how you open a conversation with someone, whether it's, again, trying to make a sale or it's just in every day of your life, how you open that conversation. So let's jump right into it. Here are the key terms from your book that are important to remember. The most important probably of this, the two that I'm going to mention the most probably is the business to consumer sale, what that actually means. And then, of course, the scripted outline, which is going to help you, especially when you're getting started in sales, to make sure you understand what you're saying, how you're saying it, and keeping brevity, but also getting the point across. So business to consumer sales is exactly what the name says. It's a business selling to a consumer or a group of consumers. Think about the context of the book in terms of ticket sales. This is a business such as a sport organization selling tickets or suites or merchandise or any sort of ancillary service from the club or from the organization to a consumer who's interested in that particular sport organization. So what's the purpose of the opening? The opening of the sales call is to grab somebody's attention. It's to plant a seed and it's to establish credibility. But it's really important to remember when you're doing these three things that you're not selling. You're not selling. You're just trying to get their attention to, like I said, plant a seed, but also to establish credibility so that they're not going to hang up the phone on you, or if it's in person, that they're not going to say, oh, I'm not interested, I don't have time, right? So really quick, really simple, grab their attention, plant a seed, and then establish credibility if you can do that, but don't start selling. That's important to remember. So it's also really important to have a pre-call. So in pre-call preparation, to have an outline rather. So for most people, it says, which are you? Most people are scripted when it comes to an outline. Myself, I prefer to be a little more impromptu, a little more on the spot to try to understand the room, to understand the consumer before I go completely scripted. Sometimes when you're scripted, it sounds just like that. It sounds like you're scripted. And that's a really easy way to lose a sale too, is to be the person that sounds like they're reading off of a piece of paper, or they're not listening to what the consumer is saying. Rather, they're just saying what's on the paper, regardless of whether the consumer answers a question in one way or another. So what I would recommend is certainly when you're starting out to have a script in front of you, but to have it more as an outline. I need to make sure that I say X, Y, and Z. I'm going to open with mentioning these key terms or this expression, make sure I get this across. I'm in the middle of the body of the conversation. I'm going to make sure I say this. And then in the conclusion, I'm going to make sure that I've summarized everything that we've talked about through the call, which can be accomplished by taking notes. Make sure that, especially when it's on the phone and someone doesn't see that you're writing down everything, you can easily type something in a computer, or you can write it down the old-fashioned way on a piece of paper, and you can use that as you go back through to say, all right, this is what I think that we've talked about today. Sounds like you'd like to purchase tickets for this particular game coming up because you like to come out on a Friday night with your kids when they're not in school. This is how much it's going to be, yada, 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 right? So the more that you make sales calls, the easier it's going to be a little more impromptu, but certainly make sure that you have some sort of an outline in place, again, especially as you're getting started. and make sure that you're going over the details of what you're going to be discussing on the call. You're not asking for the sale in the introduction. You're just asking for the time to sell them. So you're really, as we talked about, going back to those three things that we talked about first, you're just grabbing attention, planting a seed, and establishing credibility so that they trust you to sell them whatever it is that you're selling them, but you're not actually starting into a sale. And as we mentioned before, introductions can certainly lose a sale. It's probably not going to win you a sale, but it can certainly lose you one. So here are some examples of some bad introductions. The first is word vomit. So simply put, you're talking, and next thing you know, you have 15 minutes of just straight information to the consumer, and you haven't even heard whether they're on the line still at that point. They haven't said anything. You haven't given them a chance to talk or acknowledge anything that you've said. I had this example that I always think about, and this was a great coaching moment when I was interviewing for a position at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. I asked a candidate to introduce herself, and she spoke for about 20 straight minutes introducing herself and launched into why she was, a valid candidate for the position, what her strengths were, what her weaknesses are. Everything that she had prepared for the conversation, she just went for it, and she talked nonstop, word vomit. And we were muting the phone on the back end, and we were talking about how we hope that she'll stop talking so that we can actually get into the interview. It actually turns out that rather than being a jerk and kind of interrupting her, we just kind of let her talk, and we were fortunate enough that she did move on to a second interview. She ended up moving all the way through. We hired her, and then we explained to her kind of why she did what she did, and why she shouldn't do that rather moving forward. So the word vomit, don't be the person who doesn't stop talking. Be the person who answers a question, but also provides very intuitive and also thought-provoking questions to the consumer to, again, keep their attention, plant the seed, and establish some credibility. The get out of jail free card. This is pretty pretty avoidable, but it may not seem like it at the beginning. You get somebody to answer the phone, and you're automatically, again, in a way, starting to sell them. Are you the person that's in charge of buying tickets to the Philadelphia Phillies games for your family, right? So essentially, you're basically telling them that you're here to sell them tickets for X organization. So try to avoid giving somebody a cop out, because if somebody hears that they're selling to you, that you're selling to them at the beginning of a conversation, it's a really easy way, yes or no way in that situation, to say, no, I'm not. And that's the end of the conversation. You don't have anywhere to go from there. To start selling in the intro, this is building off of number 2. Don't start selling in the introduction. Again, just grab their attention, plant the seed, and establish credibility. Next, not having any information on the potential customer, especially with databases these days. You can probably find some information on this consumer. Their name has gotten to you some way, shape, or form, whether it's from a company, whether it's whether it's a consumer, which we're talking about here. Make sure that you have as much information as you can on the consumer, and also have that information in front of you. There's no need, if you have it, to not have it in front of you. Again, especially if you're on the phone, make sure that you have all that information. This person, for example, you're going to know that this person has come out to one St. Louis Cardinals game this season, or they haven't come out this year, but last year they purchased 10 games worth of tickets. So you have that information. Maybe they purchased a suite. Maybe they purchased only weekends. Maybe they purchased only weekdays, or only day games or night games, whatever it is. Have that information in front of you so that you can speak to their consumer preferences, showing that you have an understanding. And it also gives you a runway, a shorter runway, because you understand their preferences and how it might work in their behalf and your behalf as well. Next is using the wrong name. It's really frustrating to me when I get calls from the University of Louisville, clearly asking for donations to the university. They use my government name, which you all know because of my email address, which is Wesley. So they'll say, I'll answer the phone. They'll say, is Wesley there? And immediately I'm disengaged because that's not my name. And as many times as I've told them that I go by Cole and I prefer to be called Cole, and including the 6 years and the thousands of dollars that I spent pouring in, especially on my master's degree, they still call me the wrong name. And until they call me the right name, I'm not going to consider giving to the university because I feel like that's a very simple fix, especially in these days. So use the right name, try to understand, especially if it's a tricky name. Understand if somebody has spoken to this person in the past, try to use phonetics, try to Google it. When I'm recruiting for my professional basketball agency, a lot of times I'll look up YouTube videos or I'll look up some sort of pronunciation in a media guide, but I want to understand how that name is pronounced so that I don't come off looking unprofessional and looking, quite frankly, like an idiot by calling somebody the wrong name. Having a noisy background, this is something that I've noticed on some of your Flipgrids through the semester, is you have noisy backgrounds or you have distractions across the camera, or a number of different things. So make sure that you're in a quiet space where you can clearly hear the person on the other end as best as you can, and that they can clearly hear you as well. I know we're talking mostly about being on the phone, but this is a good example too. A lot of salespeople will send mass emails. So what you want to do is you want to avoid sending mass emails, or at least pretending like you're not sending a mass email. So the hi all, or the non-descriptive or the non-personalized introduction is a terrible sales approach, because it shows that you're just trying to find any business that you can. So rather than that, you can have an email template, but make sure that for each person that you're emailing, that you're targeting that, or that you're using a service like a mail merge or something like that, where it will personalize your email to each email address that's being sent. But try to avoid the mass emails, make it personalized. It'll make the difference. And then lastly, just being unprofessional overall. Unprofessional is using, derogatory language. It's using offensive language. It's trying to be very funny in certain ways. It's just making sure that you're buttoned up and that you're doing everything that you can to secure at least a conversation. Again, you're eventually going to be asking these people for money, so you want to make sure that they know that their money is in good hands. So how to intro, this is just really, really basic. Step one, use their name. Gets their attention faster. We just talked about making it personalized. All right. There are so many automated sales conversations that are out there these days, where you'll get a phone call and it'll say, "Hi, St. Louis Cardinals fan." Rather than having something like that, isn't it so much cooler to say, "Hey, Cole McKeel, how are you?" Something like that. Step two, use the name of your organization. Here, a common one that I sold for was the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. So I would say, "Hi, this is Cole McKeel from the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee." I would not say, "Hi, this is Cole McKeel from the USOPC," because you're going to lose maybe a quarter of your audience who says, "What's the USOPC? Who's the USOPC? And why is this important? Why are you wasting my time?" You're already getting people guessing. You're already getting people in a negative mindset, and therefore you're losing their attention. That's not a good thing. Step three, use a purpose statement. Get them to pick up their head halfway up from typing by expressing the goal of the call and what you're highlighting. And in essence, essentially answering, so what's in it for them? That's most important. If you're calling me, I need to know what you're calling about, why you're calling, really quickly, really short, really succinct, so that I can find out if I'm interested in having this conversation or not. And then step four, asking direct questions. Short, closed questions that get them talking before they realize they're talking to a salesperson. "Hi, how are you today? Is this a good time to chat? May I talk to you about so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so." Boom. So the purpose of the opening, again, we've talked in basics of what that is. Grab the attention, plant the seed, establish credibility. I keep saying that. But the purpose of the opening, these are the things that you need to know going into the opening. Customer information. Again, we talked about this, as much information as you can find heading into it. The right mindset. keep in mind that your energy is going to dictate the energy of the call more than likely. So if you're energetic, if you have a smile on your face, even if they can't see it, if you're using a professional voice, if you're calling them by the right name, you're going to be much better off than you are if you're dreading the conversation, you're nervous, your voice is trembling, or you don't know what you're talking about. Those are all things that are easily avoidable. So, they always say life is not just necessarily what you make of it, but how you take it. So you're going to be in sales, you're going to be making sales calls, regardless of what your profession is. So let's take the right mindset into it and let's make the most of it. You will hear no quite a bit, a lot, and that's okay. You have to keep calling. You have to keep calling. You have to keep going after it. The easier it is, the more you do it, the easier it is. And the more that you sell, the easier it is as well. And then lastly, having an objective of the call. What is the objective of this call? Am I trying to get a second call where I can talk a little more in detail? Most of the time on the phone, what you can say is, hi, this is Cole McKeel from the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. How are you doing? Ask a few questions. I would love to chat with you about your upcoming social gathering. We would love to host it at the USOPC's Olympic Paralympic Training Center. Would you be interested in finding another time where we could chat about this particular event and how I feel like we could easily host this particular event? That's totally made up off the cuff by me, but it's trying to get the objective of that call is trying to get their information or their interest rather, showing credibility, talking about the organization that I'm selling on behalf, and then trying to get a second meeting. That's it. All right. I'm not necessarily trying to seal the deal. I'm just trying to get another meeting so that we can get a little bit more in detail on what we're going to talk about. So whatever that objective is, make sure that you have an objective and you have questions and an outline to be able to achieve and accomplish that objective. So establishing rapport, we talked about this a little bit already throughout. Smile, again, even if they can't see it, be professional. All right. We've talked about some of the things that are incorporated into being professional. Use the right name with the right pronunciation as best as you can. And if you mess up someone's name, apologize for it and make sure that you make note of that so that you never do it again. All right. It's understanding to mess up someone's name once, but it's really unforgivable to do it 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And then my statements, right? Asking questions. There's some good examples in the book. Salesperson says, what's your favorite part about coming out to Busch Stadium? And the prospect says, I love getting a chance to come out with my sons. They really enjoy coming to see the games. They really enjoy watching Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina. And then you can respond by saying, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I grew up going to games with my dad. It was the highlight of our relationship together. Boom. There you go. All right. You've now established this credibility. You've established this common bond between them, and you've set a good tone for the call so that you can move into the rest of the agenda. So this is at a very basic level, opening a sales call. We talked about, some things to do earlier, but from a high level, you're introducing yourself, which we talked about. You're establishing the purpose of the call, and then you're asking for permission. Is this a good time to chat? Is a good one. I always use, is this a good time to chat? Oh yeah, this is great. Let's talk now. Or no, it's not necessarily a good call. To which I'll say, all right, perfect. Is there a better time that we can reach you? Yeah. How about Wednesday at 3 o'clock? Perfect. I'll give you a call back at Wednesday at 3 o'clock. In the meantime, I'll send you over some information that you can take a look at. There you go. You've asked for permission. You're not wasting their time, but you've also given the call on their terms as opposed to trying to jam it down their throat on your time. And then lastly, some tips. Don't hesitate to utilize references. References make the world go around. You always say it's not about what you know, but who you know rather. So if you have somebody in common, I use this all the time in terms of prospecting and setting initial calls for my agency specifically. It's, hey, so-and-so, I represent so-and-so who played with your son at the University of Louisville. All of a sudden you're establishing credibility because you're talking about people that they know, and you're talking about people that they know are playing at a different level, at a higher level. So you're establishing some built-in credibility, but you're also setting a common ground, which especially in the services side, when you're selling services, that is the most important, is understanding that people that they're familiar with or that they know and that they like are using the services already. You have a good chance of at least getting an informational meeting. Engage in small talk. Ask them what's going on. Ask them how their day is. Ask them if they're doing anything exciting coming up in the weekend. Ask them about their kids if you know that they have kids. Ask them about their profession, whatever it may be. Engage in the small talk. Pause, listen, no word vomit. Make sure you're pausing, make sure you're listening, and you're respecting the customer's time. Is this a good time to chat with you? No, it's not. All right, let's chat another time when it's a little more convenient and you can hear what I'm having to talk to you about. Find ways to schedule a meeting. This is really important. And again, it's maybe a little harder to do in the traditional B2C, cold call model, especially in introduction or, introductory jobs in sport. But try to find ways to schedule a meeting. It's much easier if you know what time you're chatting, who you're chatting with, and what you're chatting with. It also is helpful for them so that they don't have to juggle a million things on a phone call, rather that they're taking the time away from their busy day to hear you about X, Y, and Z. So emails, text messages are great ways to do these in certain situations. People kind of shudder at text message sometimes, but it's actually a pretty effective way, especially these days, as most people are hopping around. They don't have the time to take a phone call, but they have the time to send out a quick text. So you can easily send in an email or a text message to say, hi, so-and-so, this is who I am. This is the organization. Would love to find time to chat with you about X, Y, and Z. Tell me a time and a place and a date that works for you, and I'll accommodate accordingly. Boom. There you go. Same with the voicemail. Leaving voicemails. A lot of people will say if somebody calls me and they don't leave a voicemail, I'm not going to call them back. I'm guilty of that as well. As many times as my phone rings through the day, somebody's going to really want to talk to me. They're going to leave a voicemail. In that voicemail, make sure that you're very clear on who you are, what organization you're from, why you're calling, and that you can be reached back at a certain number. I know these days with caller ID and everything else, people say not to leave your number, but it doesn't hurt to leave your number, but it also doesn't hurt to, again, repeat your name, repeat your organization, and repeat the reason that you're calling. And then setting a meeting in advance of what we just talked about of a call is a great way to guarantee their time, usually at least. So if you can ask them a time and a place and a date that works for them, you have a better chance of making sure that they're going to be at the meeting and that they're going to set the time aside. So these are some tips. This is how you open a B2C conversation, a business consumer conversation, a sales call in general, some really good information here. You're going to be doing this towards the end of the semester yourself. So make sure that you're taking notes and make sure that you're practicing, but also make sure that you're reading the book to understand that through this, you're trying to do 3 different things. Lastly, that you are trying to just really quickly get their attention, plant a seed, establish credibility, and you're just trying to get whatever the objective of that call is, whether it's just a next conversation or whether it's a little more direct than that, that you're establishing an outline and getting across the finish line as best as you can. So thanks for your time. As always, any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out, and hope everyone has a great week. Thanks so much.